The Digital Heart and the Gravestone Shadow, Chapter 1. A Screen Full of Dreams. Savannah, Georgia, 2024. The Spanish moss hung heavy from the ancient oaks, draping the historic squares of Savannah in a melancholic beauty. It was a city of whispers, of hidden courtyards and shadowed alleys, a place where history clung to every brick. And for me, Amelia Thorne, it was the city where I lived a life steeped in quiet grief. My younger sister Lily had passed away 3 years ago. Not suddenly, not tragically, but slowly, painfully, from a rare illness that withered her vibrant spirit far too soon. She was 25. I was 30. Lily's death had ripped a hole in my world, a void that no amount of Savannah charm or professional success could fill. I was a freelance graphic designer, working from my sunlit studio apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of her laughter, the echoes of her favorite songs. My social life had withered, too, shrinking to a few close friends who understood the depth of my sorrow. The thought of dating, of opening my heart to another person, felt like a betrayal of Lily's memory, a step I wasn't ready to take. Then came the internet, a place where I could connect without the pressures of real-world interaction. I found solace in online forums, in creative communities, in places where I could be Amelia, the designer, not Amelia, the grieving sister. And then I met him. His username was Silent Watcher. His profile picture was an abstract shot of a misty forest, intriguing and mysterious. He was witty, intelligent, and kind in his messages. We connected on a forum dedicated to vintage photography, a shared passion. Our conversation started innocuously, discussing old cameras and film types, then spiraled into deeper, more personal topics. He spoke of art, of philosophy, of the quiet beauty in the world. He listened when I hinted at my own sorrows, offering empathy without judgment, without prying. He never revealed too much about himself. No photos, no precise location, beyond a quiet town in the south, no last name, just Michael. Michael. The name itself felt warm, comforting. His words were a balm to my aching heart, a gentle light in the darkness of my grief. He understood my love for the quiet, the unseen, the beauty in the forgotten. He had a profound way of expressing himself, a lyrical quality to his writing that captivated me. He often spoke of loss, of carrying burdens, of the enduring power of memory, in a way that resonated deeply with my own experiences. It felt as if he saw into my soul, understanding the depths of my unspoken pain. Months passed. Our messages grew longer, more frequent, spanning across different platforms. First the forum, then email, then a secure messaging app. We exchanged long, rambling thoughts about our days, our dreams, our fears. It was an intellectual and emotional intimacy, unlike anything I had ever experienced, even in real-life relationships. I found myself looking forward to his messages, to the moments when my phone would buzz with a new thought from Michael. He was my confidant, my muse, my digital anchor. I knew it was foolish, perhaps even dangerous, to fall for someone I had never met, someone whose face I had never seen, whose voice I had never heard. But my heart, starved for connection, for understanding, didn't care about logic. I was falling, deeply and irrevocably, for the man behind the screen, for the words that painted a vivid portrait of a soul I felt profoundly connected to. I cautiously shared more about my life, about Lily, about the overwhelming grief that still sometimes paralyzed me. He listened, his responses always empathetic, never saccharine. He encouraged me to embrace creativity again, to find beauty even in sorrow. His presence, though purely digital, felt more real, more tangible than many of the people who surrounded me in Savannah. I often wondered about his life, his appearance. I imagined him, kind eyes, a thoughtful smile, perhaps a quiet demeanor like his messages. I knew he lived in the South, not too far from me, given his casual references to Southern landmarks and culture. He once mentioned a deep appreciation for the architecture of Charleston, South Carolina, a city I also loved. Could he be there? The longing to meet him in person grew, a persistent ache beneath the digital comfort. To see his face, to hear his voice, to confirm the undeniable connection I felt. But I was afraid that the reality wouldn't live up to the dream, afraid that the magic would dissipate outside the confines of the screen. And what if he didn't feel the same way once he saw me, the grieving Amelia, not just the creative designer? Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, 3 years and 2 months after Lily's passing, a message from Michael arrived that shifted everything. Silent watcher, Amelia, I've been thinking. I feel like I know you, and I want to know you truly. I want to meet you. My heart leaped, then plunged into a familiar pool of fear. This was it, the moment of truth. Me, Michael, I want to too, but I'm scared. Silent watcher, I understand, but I have a feeling about this, a very strong feeling. Let's just start small. A coffee, a walk, in your city, Savannah. Savannah. He was coming to Savannah, my city of whispers and shadows, the city where Lily rested. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. The digital dream was about to collide with the raw reality of my grieving life. I was about to meet the man I had fallen in love with online. Little did I know, the real-world encounter would tie him to my greatest sorrow in a way I could never have imagined. A bond forged in pixels was about to cast a long, dark shadow over the deepest wound of my soul. Chapter 2. The Unveiling of Shadows. The confirmation that Michael, my silent watcher, was coming to Savannah, Georgia, sent a jolt of electrifying anticipation and profound trepidation through me. Our digital dream was about to step into the humid reality of my life, a life still deeply colored by Lily's absence. We agreed to meet in Forsyth Park, a public, neutral space under the iconic fountain. Friday, 10 a.m. The days leading up to Friday were a blur of nervous energy. I chose an outfit, changed it a dozen times, practiced opening lines in my head. My heart hammered with a mix of excitement and an almost paralyzing fear. What if he didn't like the real me? What if the connection we shared online didn't translate? What if the magic disappeared? Friday morning dawned bright and clear, a crisp autumn day, uncharacteristically cool for Savannah. I arrived at Forsyth Park 10 minutes early, my stomach a knot of nerves. I sat on a bench near the fountain, watching the handful of tourists and locals, my gaze scanning for anyone who might fit the imagined profile of Michael. Tall, thoughtful, kind eyes. 10 o'clock came and went. My anxiety mounted. 11 o'clock. A cold, heavy disappointment began to settle in my chest. He wasn't coming. He had changed his mind. The digital dream was just that, a dream, too fragile for the harsh light of reality. My heart, already so fragile, felt another crack. Disheartened, I rose to leave. The vibrant park suddenly feeling dull and meaningless. As I turned, I heard my phone buzz. A message from Silent Watcher. Silent Watcher. Amelia, I'm so sorry. Something urgent came up, completely unexpected. I'm already in Savannah, but I can't make it to the park. I'm at the Bonaventure Cemetery. Can you meet me there? It's important. I know it's not what we planned, but please. Bonaventure Cemetery. My heart skipped a beat, then plunged into a cold dread. Bonaventure, the most beautiful, hauntingly gothic cemetery in Savannah, and the final resting place of my sister Lily. My initial disappointment turned to confusion, then a chilling unease. Why Bonaventure? Why now? Why so urgent? A dark premonition began to bloom in my mind. Despite the unease, the urgency in his message, the desperate need to finally meet him propelled me forward. I hailed a cab, the drive to the cemetery feeling strangely surreal, like I was moving through a waking dream. The gates of Bonaventure Cemetery, ornate and imposing, loomed before me. The ancient, gnarled oaks, dripping with Spanish moss, cast long, deep shadows, even in the bright morning sun. It was a place of profound beauty, but also of profound sorrow. And for me, it was where I came to mourn, to visit Lily. I walked the winding paths, past elaborate mausoleums and weathered tombstones, my heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and a strange, almost morbid curiosity. Where was he? What could be so important here? My steps instinctively led me towards Lily's plot. It was a peaceful spot, under a graceful dogwood tree, her simple headstone engraved with her name, birth and death dates, and a small carved lily. I visited her often, bringing fresh flowers, whispering stories of my life, keeping her memory alive. As I approached, a figure stood by Lily's grave, a man, tall with broad shoulders, his back to me. He was wearing a dark jacket, his head bowed. He held a single white lily in his hand. My breath hitched. The world seemed to tilt. My hands flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. It couldn't be. As if sensing my presence, he slowly turned. And then I saw him. His face, a face I had seen countless times in old photographs, a face I knew intimately from the darkest period of my life. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, met mine. They were filled with a profound sorrow, a deep, aching pain that mirrored my own. He had the kind eyes I had imagined, a thoughtful, somber demeanor. But it wasn't the face of Michael, the anonymous digital dream. It was Dr. Liam Thorne, Lily's doctor, my sister's oncologist, the kind, compassionate, yet ultimately helpless man who had guided us through Lily's slow, agonizing decline, the man who had sat with me in sterile hospital rooms, offering words of comfort when there were none left, the man who had been the last person to hold Lily's hand before she passed, the man I had seen only a few times since the funeral, always from a respectful distance. The sight of him, too painful a reminder of my loss. He stood by Lily's grave, holding a white lily. His face etched with a grief I recognized, a grief I shared. My mind reeled, trying to connect the dots. Michael, silent watcher, Dr. Liam Thorne. It was impossible, a cruel cosmic joke. His gaze was steady, remorseful. "Amelia," he said, his voice quiet, the same voice I had heard, offering prognoses, condolences. I knew this would be hard. I had to meet you here. I had to tell you." The white lily he held seemed to glow, a stark contrast to the shadows that suddenly enveloped me. My digital dream had just shattered, replaced by a devastating reality. The man I had fallen in love with online was inextricably linked to my deepest wound, my greatest sorrow. He was the shadow at Lily's grave, and his identity unveiled a truth far more complex, far more painful than any digital deception. The veil had been lifted, revealing not just his face, but the unbearable weight of a shared, unspoken history, casting a long, new moments drawn by Lily, his white mug, his person, his face, and my own both. Dark shadow over the fragile tendrils of my heart. Chapter 3. The Weight of Unspoken Truths. The world spun around me. The ancient oaks of Bonaventure Cemetery blurring into a watercolor of Spanish moss and shadow. Dr. Liam Thorne, standing by Lily's grave, holding a white lily. The same compassionate, weary eyes that had met mine across hospital beds, now gazing at me with profound sorrow. And he was Michael, my silent watcher, the man I had fallen in love with online. Thorne, I whispered, the name a raw, painful sound on my lips. My voice was barely audible, a gasp torn from my throat. No. This isn't possible. He took a step towards me, his hand reaching out, then retracting. Amelia, he said, his voice heavy with regret. Please, let me explain. Explain what? I choked out, a wave of nausea washing over me. Explain how you've been talking to me for months, letting me fall in love with a stranger, knowing who I am, knowing who you are to me, knowing where Lily is buried. My voice rose, raw with disbelief and a searing, immediate betrayal. His face was etched with pain, his shoulders slumped. Yes, all of it. I know it seems unforgivable, and maybe it is. He gestured vaguely at the tombstones around us. Can we talk somewhere else? Or at least just sit? I shook my head, my mind reeling. No, not here, not now. The air around Lily's grave, once a sanctuary of quiet mourning, now felt tainted by this impossible revelation. Then let me walk with you, he pleaded, his voice gentle, insistent. Please, Amelia. I owe you an explanation. You deserve to know. Against my better judgment, fueled by a desperate need for answers and a strange, lingering connection that defied the sudden betrayal, I began to walk. He followed, a respectful distance behind me, as I navigated the winding paths, heading towards the cemetery gates, towards the exit, towards anything that wasn't the suffocating presence of Lily's grave and the man who stood beside it, a ghost from her last days. We ended up at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, a place far removed from the hushed beauty of Bonaventure. The quaint setting, the clatter of coffee cups, the mundane chatter of other patrons felt jarringly normal, a stark contrast to the earthquake that had just ripped through my world. Liam sat across from me, his blue eyes downcast, his hands clasped on the table. He looked exhausted, burdened. My name is Liam Thorne, he began, his voice low. I was Lily's oncologist. And I am Michael, your silent watcher. He looked up, meeting my gaze, his eyes filled with a profound remorse. I know this is incredibly difficult to hear. I never intended for it to happen this way. When I first saw your posts on the photography forum, I was drawn to your perspective, your eye for beauty, even in the mundane. Your username, Amelia Thorne, sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it at first. Then you mentioned Savannah, your sister, her illness. And the pieces clicked. Lily, Amelia, my patient, her sister. He paused, taking a slow, deep breath. I should have told you then, immediately, but I was drawn to your writing, to your vulnerability. You spoke of grief in a way I understood, a way I was experiencing myself. Lily, her case haunted me, Amelia. She was so young, so brave. I felt a profound sense of failure, of helplessness, that I couldn't save her. My heart ached, a new kind of pain mingling with the old. He had grieved for Lily too. That much was clear in his voice, in his eyes. I tried to stay anonymous, to just listen, to offer comfort as a stranger, he continued. But the more we talked, the more I fell for you. The Amelia I knew online, the brave, resilient, artistic woman, was someone I had to know. The guilt of my anonymity grew heavier with every message, every shared secret. But the fear of revealing myself, of shattering what we had, was stronger. I was terrified you'd hate me, that the connection would be broken. "So you decided to unveil yourself at my sister's grave?" I asked, my voice sharp, bitterness lacing my words. "Knowing what that place means to me, knowing that you represent the deepest pain of my life?" He flinched, the words clearly hitting their mark. It was the only place that made sense. The only place where I could honestly face the weight of my anonymity and the truth of my connection to your grief. I felt like I couldn't meet you under false pretenses anywhere else. I had to come clean, fully, where our two worlds tragically intersected. The weight of the unspoken truths hung between us. He had seen my grief firsthand, witnessed my sister's last moments. And then he had cultivated a relationship with me online. A relationship built on genuine connection, but shrouded in the deepest anonymity. His own grief, his sense of failure, had driven him to connect, to seek solace, but also to hide. I looked at him, truly looked at Liam Thorne, the man who was both a source of profound sorrow and the digital comfort I had craved. His remorse was palpable, his vulnerability raw. He hadn't intended to deceive, not maliciously. He had been navigating his own complex grief, his own demons, and in doing so, had stumbled into a relationship with me, unable to pull away, too afraid to reveal the truth. The betrayal was still there, a sharp, stinging pain. But beneath it, a layer of understanding began to form. He wasn't a monster. He was a man, deeply flawed, deeply human, grappling with his own immense grief and the ethical complexities of his profession. He had loved Lily too, in his own way, and he had, against all odds, fallen in love with me, in the shadows of the internet. A love born from shared loss and quiet connection. The unveiling of shadows had revealed not a simple deception, but a tangled web of shared sorrow, an impossible bond forged in the crucible of unspoken truths. And now, the question hung heavy in the air. Could a relationship, born from such profound anonymity and painful revelation, ever truly survive? Chapter 4: Navigating the Aftermath. The initial shock and betrayal slowly morphed into a complex tapestry of emotions: anger, confusion, and a persistent ache of hurt, but also a grudging understanding, and surprisingly, the lingering tendrils of the affection I had developed for Silent Watcher. Liam Thorne had been incredibly foolish, perhaps even unethical, but he was also deeply remorseful, and his grief for Lily felt undeniably genuine. We spent hours talking in that quiet cafe, and in the days that followed, over hesitant phone calls, and eventually, a second meeting back in Forsyth Park, away from the haunting presence of the cemetery. He explained his professional and personal struggles after Lily's passing. The feeling of burnout, the emotional toll of losing young patients, the profound sense of helplessness. He had pulled away from his medical colleagues, seeking anonymity in online forums, a space where he could just be Michael, a man with thoughts and passions, not Dr. Thorne, the oncologist who couldn't save everyone. "I know it was wrong, Amelia," he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. "To let it go on so long, to not tell you who I was. But by the time I realized the depth of my feelings for you, I was terrified. Terrified of shattering the connection. Terrified of what you'd think of me. I convinced myself that if I could just show you the real Michael," began to chip away at my wall of hurt. I shared my own journey of grief, the isolation, the longing for understanding that had led me to the internet in the first place. I confessed how deeply I had fallen for Michael, how his words had been a lifeline in my darkest days. He listened, his blue eyes filled with an empathetic pain that resonated with my own. The truth, once revealed, had to be processed. I needed space. I spent time alone, walking the quiet streets of Savannah, seeking solace in the familiar beauty of the city. I talked to my closest friend, Chloe, who, though initially shocked and outraged on my behalf, offered a pragmatic perspective. "It's messed up, Amelia, no doubt, but he clearly cares for you, and he's hurting too." The man on the screen, that was real, wasn't it? He just had a very complicated way of revealing himself. Chloe's words helped to untangle the knot of emotions. The connection with Michael was real. The empathy, the intellectual intimacy, the shared passions, those were genuine. The deception wasn't in his character, but in his identity and his method of revealing it. Liam, for his part, gave me space. He sent no messages, no calls, unless I initiated them. He understood I needed time to reconcile the two men, the digital confidant and the doctor from my sister's deathbed. A week passed. Then two. The anger began to recede, replaced by a profound sadness for the complexities of life, for the way our paths had intertwined through such sorrow. I found myself thinking less about the betrayal and more about the connection, the understanding he had offered me, the way his words had nurtured my soul when I felt most broken. One afternoon, I visited Lily's grave again. The dogwood tree was starting to shed its leaves, a gentle cascade of gold and rust. I stood there, not in anger, but in a quiet contemplation. Lily's death had brought Liam to my life, first as a doctor, then as a digital confidant, and now as a man whose presence in my heart was undeniably profound. He stood a respectful distance away, his hands clasped, a single white lily in his hand. He didn't speak, just stood in quiet solidarity, sharing the unspoken grief, the shared memory of Lily. And I also came to say that whatever you decide, whatever happens with us, I understand. No matter what, I'll always cherish the Amelia I met online. And I will always regret the pain I've caused. His confession, his willingness to step away from his career, his deep and consistent remorse, it spoke volumes. It showed a commitment to healing, not just for himself, but for the damage he had inadvertently inflicted on me. I looked at the simple gravestone, at the white lily he held. My heart, once shattered, now felt bruised, but also strangely open. The path forward was unclear, fraught with unspoken truths and the echoes of sorrow. But the connection, forged in the shadows of the internet and tragically revealed in the presence of death, was undeniably there. It was a bond born of shared loss, unexpected intimacy, and a profoundly human flaw. Navigating the aftermath of this unveiling was not about erasing the pain, but about recognizing the truth of the connection and deciding if, against all odds, a love so strangely born could ever truly blossom in the raw, unvarnished light of day. Cautious, an intensely painful deliberation, the hushed galleries of art museums. We stripped away the digital anonymity and the professional facade, trying to understand the vulnerable humans beneath. Liam was transparent about his therapy, his work on processing his professional grief and burnout, and his regret for the ethical lines he had crossed. He was taking a 6-month sabbatical from medicine, a much-needed period of introspection and healing. He wasn't pushing for anything, simply offering his presence, his truth, and his unwavering desire to earn my trust. I, in turn, continued my own journey of grief, revisiting Lily's memory, but now with a different lens. Liam was a part of her story, a painful yet undeniable part. Accepting him meant accepting a new dimension to my own healing process. My friend Chloe remained a steadfast confidant, offering wise, sometimes blunt, advice. "If he's doing the work, Amelia," she'd say, "and you still feel that connection, then it's worth exploring, but protect your heart." The core of our bond had always been our shared capacity for empathy, our love for art and beauty, and ironically, our understanding of profound loss. Liam, as silent watcher, had seen me in my deepest grief and offered solace. Now, as Liam Thorne, he revealed his own wounds, his own struggles with the weight of life and death. This shared vulnerability, stripped of digital masks, became the foundation of a fragile yet increasingly resilient connection. He visited Lily's grave with me again, not as a secret mourner, but as an acknowledged, shared presence. He brought a single white lily each time. We didn't talk much, just stood in the quiet reverence, two souls bound by memory and a complex future. It was in these silent moments, more than in any conversation, that a deeper trust began to form. Slowly, carefully, our relationship began to unfold, like a delicate bloom in the dappled light. We discovered new shared joys beyond the online world, cooking together, exploring hidden antique shops in Savannah, taking long drives along the coast of South Carolina, appreciating the architecture of Charleston. His smile, once a distant image, became real, warm, and comforting. His voice, once only heard in the sterile environment of a hospital, became familiar, a soothing presence in my daily life. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the shadow of the cemetery, of the deception, would creep in. But Liam always met them with patience, with honest acknowledgement. Never trying to minimize my feelings. His consistent effort, his genuine remorse, and his transparent journey towards healing gradually eroded the walls I had built around my heart. Once turned into a year, Liam returned to medicine, but in a different capacity, focusing on medical research rather than direct patient care, a choice he made for his own well-being and to avoid the emotional burnout he had experienced. He was passionate about finding new treatments, a quiet dedication fueled by the memories of patients like Lily. Our love, born in the digital shadows and unveiled in the stark reality of grief, was not conventional. It was forged in the crucible of sorrow and truth, a testament to the complexities of human connection. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real, honest, and deeply meaningful. One autumn afternoon, 3 years after our meeting at Bonaventure, Liam and I found ourselves back under the sycamore tree in Forsyth Park, the same spot where I had waited for Michael all those years ago. The leaves were turning gold, dancing in the gentle breeze. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple silver locket, unadorned, but engraved with a single, delicate lily. "Amelia," he said, his blue eyes warm with love, "I know our beginning was messy, complicated, and I'll never stop regretting the pain I caused you. But what we found, it's real, it's strong, and it's built on a foundation of truth now." He opened the locket, revealing a tiny, almost imperceptible inscription inside, "Always seen." "With this," he continued, fastening it around my neck, the cool metal a comforting weight, I promise you, Amelia, that you will always be seen, truly seen, always. Tears streamed down my face, tears of profound joy and a deep, abiding peace. This was not a replacement for Lily, nor an erasure of my grief. This was a new beginning. A love that acknowledged the past, honored the sorrow, and bravely embraced the future. The digital heart had found its true anchor. The shadow at the gravestone had been unveiled, not as a deception, but as a complex human truth, revealing a profound love born from the depths of shared sorrow. Our story was a testament to the unexpected ways love can bloom, even in the darkest of places, reminding us that sometimes the most profound connections are found not in the perfectly curated dreams, but in the raw, unvarnished light of dawn, where all truths are revealed and all hearts finally truly seen.